course, not even a story. It's our opinion. Today, everybody, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, wherever you're watching this, thank you for watching. We have got to talk about our top 15 NBA players. I think this list will shake up a lot of people.
There's going to be people who are upset, probably. What's new?
Exactly. So, with that being said, let's get right into it. Pete, why don't you go first?
You want to start with honorable mentions? People who maybe could or should be in our top 15, or maybe just aren't, or maybe we think are going to be soon. You want to start with a few?
Sure. Why don't you go ahead? Why don't you go ahead and start? Actually, let me create a new row.
New row of honorable mentions. Let's just throw a few honorable mentions in there, because there's a few of them I think that are like pretty easy. Like these guys could or should be in the top 15. I'll name a few right off the bat. One is Zion. I think Zion, if he's healthy, is top 15. I think he's like right at the bottom of the top 15, but he's there. I mean, the stretch we saw of Point Zion in the 2020 season, he was easily a top 15 to me personally. So Zion, yes, is one. I would argue, I think Anthony Edwards is an honorable mention. I think he's probably like number 23 or 24 when I put my list out, or when I put my list together. I was writing stuff up, doing some research the other night.
Yep.
I have him in the 23 range, but I think by the end of this season, I think he's a top 15 player. That's just my opinion. I have super high hopes for Anthony Edwards, and I think he's that guy. I think he is.
He's that guy, pal.
Another honorable mention, somebody else I'm going to say, is Anthony Davis. I don't think Anthony Davis is in the top 15 currently, but by all accounts, he should be. Unless he's in your top 15, then we could, discuss, but I don't think he should be right now, personally. But he's close.
Okay. Anybody else? Anybody else that's in the...
The last one I will say is an honorable mention for me. There's definitely a few of these guys that should be honorable mentions that we're just not naming right yet. But we'll come back, I guess, around. I'm going to say Jaylen Brown. I don't think Jaylen Brown is a top 15 player. I think he's probably somewhere at the bottom of the 25 as well.
Yeah.
He might even be like 26 or 27, maybe.
I think he's 25.
I think he's 25 too. I think that's where I had him on my list. But I think he's potentially an honorable mention right outside the top 20 on most days. Like, I would argue in a lot of that playoff run for the Celtics, he was like a top 15 player. It's just whether he could be that consistently, get his dribble, his handle together, and be a bit more of a playmaker. I would like to see that from him.
Yeah.
Any honorable mentions for you, my friend?
I think I got to put Darius Garland in the honorable mention. I think.
Ooh, I like that one.
Again, I think he's a player that's on the rise. I think with the Colin Sexton injury, it kind of made Darius Garland the primary ball handler, kind of forced him into I love him, and I kind of compare him to Steve Nash a little bit more of an athletic Steve Nash, someone who has the IQ of the game perfectly down, knows when to pick up the dribble, when to just kind of continue going and exiting like Steve Nash did in that Phoenix Suns offense. I'm loving what I'm seeing from Darius Garland, so I'm excited to see him grow and develop. Another person that I'm going to put on the list, because I think that this could be a breakout season for him at some point.
Okay.
We keep saying it, is Brandon Ingram.
Wow, see, I wouldn't have said that. I like it, though.
We talk about a guy like Brandon Ingram. Again, it's always the potential with him. We talk about that, time in and time out. Even, the years when he was with LeBron James in the Lakers. I think that he's someone that has the potential to break out at some point. It just depends on, the situation. I think the situation's right this year, and I could definitely see him making some noise for the top 25 players. Again, honorable mention in this list, so I'm excited to see him. I think another person is obviously going to have to be... who am I going to put on this list?
I got one more. I don't know if he's going to make our top 50. He might make your top 15, but he's not in mine just because of some injury stuff.
Okay, go ahead.
I think Dame Lillard is an honorable mention. I don't think he's top 15 right now, unfortunately.
Yeah.
We need to see him play. We need to see him get back healthy.
Yeah.
That ab injury he had for a while, got surgery last season. But even then, USA in the Olympic basketball, he was pretty bad. He was pretty bad during that stretch, and when he did come back at the beginning, I think he played in a little bit of the beginning of last season, right? Before he got injured.
Yeah.
Or before he decided to get the surgery. He I mean, if he's right, he's clearly a top 15. I think there's a couple guys that I would slide down and put him even higher than probably a few of them. Like he probably is like number 10, 9, 10, somewhere in there if he's healthy. Yeah. But we need to see it from him first. He's honorable mention for me. I have one last one I would nominate. The only concern, I'm going to skip it though, because I think he's on your list. I think he made your list of top 15. So we're going to have to debate whether he's going to make the top 15.
All right, I'm excited for that. One more person I'll put in my my honorable mention list is DeMar DeRozan. I think he also kind of deserves a little bit of a mention. I
like that too.
Again, played some really, probably, had a revival year last year when a lot of people kind of were like, he probably should just take the mid-level exception from the Lakers, but the Bulls believed in him, gave him a huge contract, and he, rewarded them with this great play. Unfortunately, the injuries kind of shortened the season for them, but again, I'm excited to kind of continue seeing his progression as a player, seeing how he does, and so I think DeMar DeRozan deserves to be on that list for me.
True. Very, very true. All right. We can come back. Let's circle back around to the honorable mention. Before we get into our list, I have a question for you. This is critical because I actually am such a nerd with this stuff. I actually kind of wrote my list in two different ways. I had one that I was accounting for chemistry. I was accounting for like how they impact like a team.
Okay.
There's some obvious people in there, right? And I think it really devalues certain players. And I think if you have the ability to be objective about it, right, you can still see that there are certain players that are so good that they outweigh their chemistry issues, right? But they certainly detract from their value, right? Like they obviously do. So are we going to include chemistry concerns or just people who have some off the court issues? I include them, but are we going to let that affect their place on this list? Because it changes a few for me. Not by a ton, but it does change my list a little bit.
I'll go no. Let's not let that affect anything.
Oh gosh, okay. All right. I'm ready for it.
All right. Who's your number 15? Numero 15. 15.
Man, this is tough. This is a guy I would not have said. No, I'm gonna. You know what? I'm gonna say it's Trae Young is my number 15.
Trae Young, Ice Trae.
Trae Young is my top. He's in my top 15. He's number 15.
Okay.
There's just things with Trae Young that definitely are big detractors, and we're gonna skip the chemistry stuff. But Trae Young's defense has to come into the equation. Like. There's just certain guys, like, and I'll spoil. Number 14 for me is going to be Paul George, is 14.
PG.
And I went back and forth with this because I would argue that I would rather take Trae Young personally if I'm trying to win a championship right now. I think I could build the team around him that would support him, but the problem is that Paul George is just so much more well-rounded. He just is so much more well-rounded, and a lot of the guys that I'm going to come to on this list, they're pretty much all more well-rounded players than Trae Young is. So Trae is 15. It's just his offense is just so good. What you were so high on him coming into that year's draft, I'll never let people forget. Bernie was riding so hard for the Trae Young folks out there. I mean, this guy was all on top of it, and you couldn't have been more right. Everything you said about him is pretty much proven to be true for the most part. But the one thing that always surprises me with Trae, because it's just not like he's famous for shooting threes, even this early in his career. That's what people think of. But he's such a good passer. His court vision is so good for how small he is. It's just a thing of absolute beauty, and really that's what puts him in the top 15. If it was just based on his scoring, there's guys I would rather take, like that I think are like Darius Garland is a good example. I would argue even Darius Garland is a little bit more well-rounded of a player than Trae Young is. I might be off on that, but I think he is. The difference is that Trae Young is just such an otherworldly passer on top of his scoring. It really puts him in an elite category.
Yeah.
14 is Paul George. Paul George has actually climbed up my ranks in the last few years.
Push off P?
A lot of that, dude, I've been really impressed with how he's held down the Clippers when he's been healthy. Like, he has really held them down in a way that I didn't think he was capable of doing. And that is not due to his talent. I've always thought Paul George is a bit of a head case in like a not in a disrespectful way, but like I think he gets in his head a lot when he's playing. And I think we've seen that at many times in his career. Obviously some of the playoff implosions in the middle of his career.
Yeah.
But he's proved me wrong, man. That run they had once Kawhi got injured really started to change my opinion of him. And when he was healthy last season, there was points where he was like a top 10 player. So I'm going to say Paul George is 14.
Yeah,
13.
I kind of figured.
Oh, go ahead.
No, the only thing I was going to say, I kind of figured that you would talk about that in terms of PG on this list. So he was on my honorable mention list, but I thought you would talk about him, so I kind of left him off the list. So just a heads up.
Yeah, you left Paul George off your list.
I left him off the list.
That is very interesting to me because now that means that one of the guys I left off my list is certainly going to be on yours. My number 13.
All right, go ahead. 13.
God, dude, I'm going to shift my list. I'm sorry. I'm shifting my list.
Okay.
I'm going to put my number 13. I'm going to move him to 15, and just the other two can just slide up one. I'm going to put Kyrie at 15.
Kyrie at 15. Let's see, where is it?
Kyrie is not in my top 15 if we went by my chemistry list. I wouldn't even have him in my top 30 if in the chemistry list. And that's not even being crazy. Like he's like 32 or 33, right? Of like, this is a guy I would want if I was trying to win. But Kyrie is just, he's so talented. It makes it so frustrating to like, you just want him to be that guy on the court all the time. And, you know, barring any of your stances on Kyrie off the court, I'm not trying to get into that. We're not even talking about it. Mm-hmm. It's just one of those things where you just wish you could see this guy play more often. Like, that is always what comes down to, like, why I get so frustrated with Kyrie. Mm-hmm. He's so talented. He might be one of the just most pure talented players we've ever seen in the NBA. The question is, like, can he ever get out of his own way enough to just show everybody how good he is? And the reason I just changed him from 13 to 15, and it's something I kind of forgot and didn't take into consideration. He was really bad in that round one against the Celtics this last playoffs. A lot of that probably has to do with just not playing a lot of games leading into the playoffs, but he was really not good and didn't leave Kevin Durant with a lot to work with, and just their team was so depleted in general. It didn't look good all around. So I think he's still good enough compared, because the question is, let's say somebody who was barely outside of my list, I had him as number 17 as Chris Paul. I would rather have Kyrie than Chris Paul right now, and that's, on the non-chemistry list, I think you'd be pretty hard-pressed to say, even as good as Chris Paul is, does he give you even, 3/4 of what Kyrie can give you on his best night? And I don't think the answer is yes. So, number 12, and this is where I'm going to upset a few people, all right? This is probably my most controversial placement
Julius
on the whole
Randle.
List.
You don't even have to say it. You don't even have to say it.
Jalen Brunson. No, I'm just kidding. Number 12, I'm going to put Devin Booker at number 12.
Booker. D-Book.
I'm going to put him at number 12, man. My issues with Devin Booker have been well documented on this channel. I think Devin Booker, I wouldn't put him in the top 12 if I didn't think he was otherworldly good when he's on. It's to me, it's the same thing as kind of what I was referring to with Paul George earlier in his career. I think Devin Booker is kind of a get in his own head type of player. And we talked about this in depth last week, so if you really want to hear my thoughts on Devin Booker, go back and watch. I don't know if we put out an individual video of that, the players that have a prove-it year coming up. I had a lot of thoughts on Devin Booker. I think this is a big prove-it year for D-Book. Mm-hmm. And I need to see, this is ultimately what it boils down to for Devin Booker. I'm going to sum it up very quickly.
Okay.
We have not seen Devin Booker on an elite team where Chris Paul was not the leader. We have never seen that. And as soon as I see it where Chris Paul is now no longer the leader on the court and Devin Booker is clearly the guy, and they're still a playoff winning team, okay, I'm all the way in. I just don't think that's the case. Like, we haven't seen it yet. I think he's got it in him. It's just when's he going to get the chance to? One, it's probably when Chris Paul retires, but also, is he really going to have that type of leadership mentality? I'm interested to see it at the end of the day. Number 11. God, this is a little controversial too, man, but I'm going to put Jimmy Butler at number 11.
Jimmy Buckets.
It's only controversial because I have a guy above him at number 10, and I'm going to say who it is now. It's Kawhi. I have Kawhi at number 10 and Jimmy Butler at 11. And it's a little hypocritical in the sense that I said the injury concerns for a few of our honorable mention players. Kawhi Leonard hardly plays over the last few years.
Yeah, those
it's
concerns.
It's not fair. I will be straight up honest with you. In a certain way, it's not fair. But at the end of the day, I cannot think of anything but that run with the Toronto Raptors. And I know that it was a few years ago. I get it. But there are only so many players in the NBA's history who can
time
do
to let
what
that go,
Kawhi Leonard did. I can't let it go because I think he's still that guy. I really do.
Okay.
I really do. And this is a longer discussion for a different stream, one that we just mentioned, our actual team power rankings. I really think the Clippers they're like a top 4 team this season, in my opinion.
Spicy.
I think they're going to be right in it. I think they're going to be right in it. Kawhi is just different, man. And when it comes down to it, we were talking about the well-roundedness of a player like Trae Young. There are maybe 3 dudes in the league that are more well-rounded than Kawhi Leonard, if any. He's such a freak defensively. I mean, nobody's ever shot, and this is not even reasonable to bring this up, but I'm going to do it anyway because it's one of my favorite series ever in playoff history. The Heat.
94.
Heat first. Yeah, 94 Knicks Heat. No. The Heat first series. Young Kawhi shuts down LeBron in the playoffs, man. I mean, that just showed everything that Kawhi is and can be at his healthiest. And the reason, let me go back to Jimmy now.
Okay.
The only reason I would put Jimmy, and maybe I should switch them, but I just don't feel like doing it because I think Kawhi is better. The highest high-end Kawhi Leonard is just like a tier above Jimmy. He's just a tier above. He just is. I'm sorry. I love Jimmy. I wanted to put him in my top 10 really bad. It's just like he's just offensively, he goes through too many stretches where he's just not enough offensively to be like, Kawhi never goes as cold as Jimmy does sometimes, and we'll have these big stretches. I mean, there was a big stretch in the middle of last season where people thought Jimmy had lost a step, including myself. I was worried about it. I love Jimmy.
Yeah.
I was worried about it, but I mean, his playoff run again, it's Jimmy, dude. He is, when it comes down to it, there are not many players you would want in a big minute more than Jimmy Butler. There's just not. He wants it. Number 10. Wait, how about we do this?
Yeah, I was going to say,
break it up.
5 and 5. Yeah.
I love it.
Let's
ready.
do that.
Give me off the hot seat. I'm sweating.